very well. I like wait. I like the Destroyer movie very much. The attack on Hong Kong was not exactly what I wrote, but it's very good.
I think the Destroyer movie is an insult to everybody.
Oh, shut up.
Listen, I love every Godzilla film just because it's Godzilla. Godzilla looks great in it, but Toho everybody seems to, have bought this Godzilla dies crap. And I mean, come on, a lot of other movies were a lot more emotional, with either Godzilla being beaten or actually dying. And this was just a marketing thing. He's back in 5 minutes at the end of the film. I mean,
I give you that. I give you that. I agree. I think that was a bit of a cop out.
The film is a marketing farce. They blew it up to be something it's not. This is the way that they compete with the Gamera series now is to blow their films out of proportion as works of art, and they're going to be they're going back to the horror atmosphere of the original film.
I'll give you all
load
of
of baloney.
I'll give you all of that in a sense. I agree that Toho is very cynical, but I do think that Destroyer was extremely well made. I think that Takao Okawara, who directed it, he also directed Godzilla vs. Mothra and Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, is by far the best Godzilla director to come down the pike.
I agree with that, but they should have stopped with Mechagodzilla.
That was the plan. It didn't happen, and it was the plan. They were going to stop with Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. They did not. They inflicted Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla upon us. Fans, raise your hands. Godzilla. But Destroyer, I think, is a very fine film. It's not a bad way to go out.
The key point is this also ties in with the films that were made after Mechagodzilla, and also how it ties in with the TriStar film. And I mean, I think that's the key point that we've heard lots of rumors, and a lot of people have been concerned also what the lawsuit might mean for G-Fan and stuff like that. And what we want to try and do now is just open it up to the floor. Again, I only ask anybody who has any questions to please go to the podium, because we'll get you on videotape. And again, hopefully we can answer some questions and give you some insight on what the future for Godzilla holds in the United States, and what the future holds for G-Con and Ultrafan and G-Fan. So if anyone has questions, and Club Daikaiju. Anybody have any questions? Anything? I'll sing if you don't have questions, and you don't want me to sing. Okay,
I guess they're not worried.
No. No. Get up and please just go to the podium. That's all. The podium over on the... Just start forming a line at the podium like we do.
So everybody can hear you, that's all.
Nakajima, please. Yes, sir.
Yeah, do you have any idea what the new TriStar Godzilla is going to look like?
No, we don't. We do hear that from Roland... the new director of the film is supposed to be the Independence Day director, Roland Emmerich. And supposedly he wants to make it look like a very traditional Godzilla and try to make it a very traditional Godzilla tone, not traditional Godzilla tone in the tradition of the first film. If that's so, then hopefully it will look more like the real Godzilla that we are used to, instead of the T-Rex, which is the design that we keep seeing otherwise. I hope that's what happens.
Me too. Thank you.
Good.
Two-part question. First of all, how often does Toho correspond with you guys? I mean, are you getting letters every week? Are you getting letters monthly?
When the lawyers feel like making money, they send a letter out.
Yeah,
because
send
basically
a letter for
it's very... But this is really... It is funny, but it really isn't, because every letter the lawyer sends, he makes money off of. So there's an interest there for him to send a letter. And probably the best thing to do is... Probably what anybody should have done in this situation is to ignore them, because the lawyer wants to send as many letters as he can.
Every letter that gets sent back means that they can charge Toho for another letter, and so on and so on. It's been going on for years that way. Separate
from this whole issue of if there has been some kind of copyright infringement, which in this case there hasn't, I mean, separate from that, the lawyer wants to make money.
And is it...
I'm sorry. Let me just say that you also remember, like, with last year's show, they sent a whole slew of letters, both to myself, Mr. Robert Biondi, Mr. J.D. Lees, and the hotel, that we played almost like musical chairs with them back and forth with these letters. And again, like Jim said and Guy pointed out, I mean, they make money every time they write the letter. But let me just explain, whoever wasn't here yesterday, which some people don't understand, is that... Toho actually went to Mr. Satsuma and Mr. Nakajima and basically told them, you can't go to America. And Mr. Satsuma, who Mr. Cirronella met just before, his attitude was basically, they can't tell me what, I think, and he'll correct me, is that, you know, Toho thinks I'm their slave and that they owe me, and they can't,
he put it in a very nice way, but I said to him, he explained to me that Toho International contacted him and told him not to come to America, and I said, well, you know, after all the work you've done, and keep in mind that he was freelance for all these films, like he stated at the press conference, for all the work you've done, I just don't think that's very fair of them to ask that of you. I mean, they're coming here to, you know, see all the fans, and they should, you know, for all the work he's done, he should get that enjoyment.
Having said that, the reason they didn't want Mr. Nakajima and Mr. Satsuma to come here is because they don't want the fans, as was said yesterday, to have any kind of enjoyment at all. They want us to go away. It's that simple.
Yeah, I mean, the key point, especially we hope we can achieve, and I think we've achieved it this year and next year and future years, is that, I mean, we have a right to enjoy this stuff. We have a right to basically be fans, and Toho's attitude has been like, one time something came up that if you buy a model and you build it, you still can't photograph it for a magazine because you just leased it from them. They still own it because it looks like Godzilla. And that we don't have the rights for the Bandai figures to be imported here.
Or anybody participating in this convention, well, from what the letter said last year, anybody participating in this convention is participating in copyright infringement.
Well, actually, the letter said last year that,
according to them,
if we showed Mechagodzilla, which we didn't, and we told them we wouldn't, but if we showed Mechagodzilla, everyone in the hotel, for that matter, I should have said everyone in Chicago, would be held liable. You know, so some guy up on the 6th floor watching a ball game while Mechagodzilla, if it was shown here, you know, he'd get a letter. I mean, that's their attitude. Their attitude is to try and get all of us fans to be like, oh, hands off, it's too hot a thing to handle.
But an even bigger reason why, in case you don't understand why he said they want the fans to go away, I think the reason is because of this TriStar film.
That's the only reason.
Well, of course, you have to understand, in Japan, Toho owns like every stage of the distribution of their films and the merchandise. They own the theaters. The first dollar that's collected goes to them. The merchandise that's sold, I'm sure they're getting a cut of every slice of the pie. Now in America, it's a lot different. I mean, many filmmakers have had a hard time collecting the money due to them because there's so many hands down the chain.
Having said that, here's another myth I would like to explode. Toho has they have a certain way of doing business in Japan that they're used to. Now, Toho in the late 50s and early 60s had a very productive relationship with the Hollywood major studios. For instance, Columbia Studios helped produce Mothra, not widely known. Columbia Studios sank $100,000 of their own extra money into the film Mothra in order to give us the New York City finale. The original ending of Mothra was just in Tokyo. Mothra is born and kills Nelson, and so on and so forth. One reason why it goes on like that is the extra 20 minutes that in New York City is because Columbia paid for it. Columbia had its own reasons. Columbia had distributed 2 other Toho films, The H-Man and Battle in Outer Space, both huge hits. Really the Star Wars of their day. People forget this. And then Mothra was the biggest of all. Mothra had lines around the block. People who lived in 1961 and saw Mothra at the theaters will tell you this was a huge, huge picture. Columbia just promoted it to no end. Then after that, nothing, huh? Then after that, they work with Universal for King Kong versus Godzilla, and then after that, they do not work with the major studios at all. It is impossible that all the major studios screwed Toho. Quite the opposite. Toho has always been an impossible company to deal with. Their demands have always been ridiculous. And Columbia finally decided after 3 films it was not worth dealing with them. Universal, after 1 film, the same. Henry Saperstein, who has probably had the most productive relationship of any Hollywood producer with them, told us directly, a year and a half ago, told us point blank, he said, every time I went to negotiate with Toho again, whether it be Frankenstein versus Baragon, Monster Zero, War of the Gargantuas, Terror of Mechagodzilla, he said every time I saw them again, it was like we were starting from scratch. It was like they're pretending I don't know you. We don't know you guys. We have no history. That is what they're like. And so, because of this, Hollywood being a relationship-oriented industry, Columbia got sick of it, Universal got sick of it, and Toho essentially bought their own way into working with these fly-by-night companies that released the films in the early 70s.